Joining us now, NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, who's covering the White House. Ashley Parker, staff writer for The Atlantic. Her interview with the president is the June cover story. Also with us, Carlos Curbelo, former Republican congressman from Florida. So, Vaughn, what else is the White House saying about all this?
Right. Well, number one, Jose, there is now an express pattern here that we have seen from this administration over the last weeks, making claims about individuals who they have removed or sought to remove from the United States. In the instance of some individuals who they had claimed had gang affiliations, yet it presented no facts or no details as to their connections. And now in this case, you have the individuals, the mothers, denying through their legal representation that they made the decision to have their children be removed from the country to Honduras with them, in the case of one 4-year-old boy who is receiving cancer treatment. And from the administration standpoint, they have continued over the last weeks, and including here today from Tom Homan and Caroline Leavitt, making the case that these were individuals who were, number one, in the country illegally in an undocumented status. And that is where the family members who have been deported with them are by nature going to suffer the consequences of the decisions that their parents, or in the case of that these mothers, made to come into the United States and have their children here despite being undocumented. I want to let you listen to the press secretary earlier this morning.
This president is trying to simply enforce our nation's immigration laws and is facing roadblock after roadblock. So we're complying with court orders, but as Tom Homan has said every day, we're going to continue to forge ahead with this mass deportation campaign, and the president is open to all remedies to do that.
And again, the question here is, to what extent is the administration following court orders? Kilmar Abrego Garcia remains in El Salvador, and in the case of these three young U.S. citizen children, they have already been removed from the United States and are already in Honduras, Jose.
So, Carlos, I'm just wondering, because, you know, Donald Trump and Tom Homan, for the entire presidential election, we're talking about something like this. If it ever happened, that would be the outcome, right? U.S.-born children, and if their parents are undocumented and are being deported, they have the choice to whether bring them along or not. But the question is the due process issue. And I'm just wondering, Carlos, do you think this is going to have some kind of weight in the White House? Carlos, I'm not hearing you. I don't know if... Check the mute button there for a second.
It was not the mute button, but what I was saying is that while the administration understands that there's still broad public support for aggressive enforcement of immigration law in this country, they also know that there's a breaking point. And these human stories, I remember this from the first Trump term when I was serving in Congress, when the child separation policy shocked so many Americans. That's when the administration lost the public on the immigration issue. The immigration issue has been Donald Trump's signature issue, his strongest issue. The country's willing to be patient with him and with Republicans as they try to correct some of the excesses of under the previous administration. But once these human stories really start connecting with the public in a very dramatic way, then that becomes a danger zone for the administration. They could lose the public, and that, of course, could be bad news for congressional Republicans as they head into the next election.
Actually, in your interview for The Atlantic, you asked the president what would happen if his administration accidentally deported the wrong person, a legal resident or even a U.S. citizen. He said, quote, "Let me tell you that nothing will ever be perfect in this world." What do you think he meant by that?
I think he meant that the administration will make mistakes. As The Atlantic reported, they have already in court filings, for instance, admitted that they've made mistakes, that the Maryland father who was deported to a prison in El Salvador, that was a quote unquote administrative error. That was a mistake. It was an interesting response. And in fact, if you believe that nothing in life will be perfect, that is in fact an argument for due process.
And Ashley, I just want to know, because you know, it is such an unusual, thing that the president would sit down with The Atlantic and you know, give you and your colleagues so much time to do it. Well, unusual because of, you know, there's been no love lost from the president towards The Atlantic. Take us into that room. Take me into that moment in that interview?
Sure. So for our cover story, the backstory is kind of wild. So I'm just going to start a little back before that Oval Office interview. We're doing a cover on President Trump. We wanted to explain his remarkable political comeback and how he is wielding power now. We had put in for an interview request, as you would with any White House. We were tentatively told we had one. Then right as we were about to go in, this is about a month or two ago, someone showed the president some things I had said and written that he didn't like. And he very publicly on Truth Social canceled that interview, attacking me and my co-author, Michael Shearer, by name. We then were able to get the president's cell phone number. Michael called him on a Saturday morning in Bedminster. It's an unknown number to the president. He picked up, said hello, and spoke with Michael for 20 minutes. So we had that interview. And then after the story had closed and gone to the presses, we actually got a call last week from an aide to the president who said, are you guys free, along with your boss, editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg, tomorrow, a day away, to come into the Oval Office and interview the president? We were told we'd have 20 minutes, and we ended up having an hour. So the entire thing has been a bit of a whirlwind.
And, Jeffrey Goldberg, who was involved in that whole Signal Gate issue, actually, what was the kind of like the back and forth like?
Sure. It's a question so many people have, understandably. And, if you've covered Trump, the one thing you know about him, the thing that is very consistent is he is someone who is trying to win the minute, the hour, the day, the person directly in front of him. And he is very savvy about his audience and his goals. So he had attacked us on Truth Social several times, specifically Jeff Goldberg. But when we went in that moment, President Trump was the version of himself that is charismatic, charming, respectful. In the interview, he was very much oriented towards Jeff, kind of trying to win him over to make sure that Jeff really understood where Donald Trump, was coming from, what was his plan, as he put it, to save humanity for this term in his presidency. And one other interesting thing, when he had attacked Jeff most recently on the morning of our interview, he had said, Signalgate was somewhat of a success. And so when we went in, Jeff asked him, what exactly did you mean by that? Did you mean, we exposed operational security flaws that you have now corrected? And it was sort of a game respects game moment, actually. The president said, no, it was a success because you really broke through. You really dominated the news cycle. And Trump, in many ways, in addition to being the president of the United States, is sort of a frustrated media mogul. And he respects someone who can own a news cycle, which is what Jeff in The Atlantic did with Signalgate.
Yeah, and Carlos is thinking about owning the news cycle. It's something that the president is very keen and has been very keen on even before he was in politics. That was his focus. The polls that are coming in, and there are a new series of polls, the most recent ones, for the most part, they show a majority approve of the plan to deport people here illegally. The question is how it's being done. For example, in a new CBS News YouGov poll, 73% say it's not acceptable for legal U.S. residents to be mistakenly detained. 81% say it's not acceptable for legal U.S. residents to be mistakenly deported. 67% believe non-citizens should face a court hearing or other legal processes before being deported. The president posting this morning, we don't have a free and fair press in this country anymore. We have a press that writes bad stories, cheats big on polls. It is compromised and corrupt. So which one of the two is it, Carlos?
Well, look, the president can dismiss these polls, Jose, but I can tell you that congressional Republicans are watching these polls very closely because they're up next, right? They have to face voters in November. And look, the president may dismiss the polls, but he also understands that he doesn't want Democrats in control of Congress. He would like to continue advancing his agenda for as long as possible. So yes, this is standard Donald Trump, dismiss the polls, counter whatever information is being put out there. But at the end of the day, they do care about these polls. They do adjust to them. We certainly have seen that with the tariff policy. We have seen that with Doge and Elon Musk. And I think the point you were making at the beginning is also very important. a lot of these issues are issues where the administration is where the public is at, or at least a majority of the public is at. The problem they're having is how they are approaching these issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's tariff policy, or even these government reform efforts. People support making government more efficient, but they want it to be done in a humane, coherent, and predictable way.